It isn't really new thinking, I guess. I think IEPs were always supposed to be thoughtful, intentional documents. We're always supposed to believe that all kids, can be successful in school, whether that's academically, socially, or emotionally. But what I like about the rededication to creating a quality IEP for kids is the conversation.
You know, I think staff are really more aware. They're more aware of the needs of the kids. I think the parents are more aware of the needs. The disability-related needs wasn't a big part of the conversation maybe in the past, but now we're talking about it. Is it, is it fluency? Is it reading, comprehension? Do we have to break it down to phonemic awareness or phonics? Really, what is it within the reading that is really challenging the child?
The staff in turn have talked to our parents is that you can really see the flow of how the conversation should be taking place, that you're really talking a little bit about, okay, here are the student's strengths and this is what we know about the student, but more importantly, here are the student's disability-related needs. Those disability-related needs really should be driving the goals, and then the goals really should be driving the services, and everything is interconnected.
And so that process is a much more exciting, synergistic place to be versus the older model, which was to talk a lot about where kids were at, not always connecting that to learning outcomes, and being a very brief and not very engaging IEP.
In the past, in my experience as a parent, having gone through IEP meetings, we never had discussions as to asking why 5 times, and oftentimes people just jumped to, we're going to write a goal about speech, and we never asked those questions of why.
Staff come to those meetings much more participatory. We're talking a lot more about what are the strengths of the student, what can they already do. We're coming prepared with much more data. What does that data mean? Not just numbers on a MAP assessment or a cognitive assessment, but what does this data really mean? And then you're asking more questions about why are kids not successful?
Families may say, my child needs an aid. Well, why does your child need an aid? Well, because my child can't read. Well, why can't your child read? And kind of going through that process, I learned so much.
And really encouraging our educators to go through this 5-step process with all of our students. I think that for some, the initial sort of thought was that maybe this was just for academics and that the FBA could sort of supplant this. And while we see those with the FBA and CCR IEPs as certainly very complementary processes, they're actually not exactly the same. So we want to make sure that our educators really understand that, but that it's very important to go through that process for students who are presenting with behavioral challenges in the classroom. Sometimes we find that the root cause is actually an academic root cause. And sometimes we find that it is sort of a behavioral root cause.
We look at the 5-step process, then ultimately we can take all that information and determine what the student needs and talk about that and make sense of it. If there's a root cause that's identified, then everybody can feel more comfortable having those conversations.
So I believe this process, along with the ability to effectively progress monitor, will allow us to improve student outcomes.